It should be your computer, actually, you know? Well, whatever. I'm just gonna say hi to Elena. Hello. All right. Oh, yes, that
Hi,
was a service.
hi.
Eh, I'm gonna be
You.
doing like this so you can see everyone. And
Hi, everyone. Mission for attention there.
uh,
Wow.
huh? Uh-huh. Yes, give me a second. Are you with the camera as well? No. Oh, yeah. No, she doesn't have a camera.
No, but you need to share yours with me. Otherwise she can't see.
Ah, you're right. Oh my God. I'm a grandma today. What's going on? Oh my God. It's too early. Yeah, now you can see, right? Yes. Yes.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Very short. On the 24th of March, we're gonna have this meal sharing in real life. So the idea is that each of you brings something to share for the lunch break. All right. So if it's something from your culture, even better. I will do the same, and I'm gonna bring in sodas as well. Yes. I'm gonna do an Excel probably on this, so we know like who's bringing what, so we avoid like having all these weeks or stuff like that. Yes.
I just like to mention that 24th of March is going to be in Ramadan. So just to mention out that some people might be fasting, some might not be. So
It's gonna be what?
fasting during Ramadan.
Oh. So maybe should we do it after in April?
April the 10th, I think is going to be the last day.
Okay, then we can just move it to what day. Sorry about that.
No.
But good to know. Good to know. All right, so forget about that. We're gonna talk about that later then again. And yes, as Chris said, there's no session on the 31st of March, so it's a good opportunity to catch up if you have some homeworks that you need to do. And yes, we are starting this week with the mock interviews. So for those that haven't seen the message in the group and you want to join, please maybe raise your hand now, because the idea is we're gonna work on real cases. Like the idea is you're gonna pair two and two, and then I will give you a case and the questions, and then one of you is gonna be like doing the interview to the other person. All right, and then yeah. I need you to also collect some data about it and give it to me after, so then we can know like where is everyone with this interview process, right? And yeah, so if you haven't reacted with the emoji in the message I sent, you can also tell me today because I'm gonna be doing the groups and sharing them at the end of this class. Yes, and we also want to share. Didn't work. Let's see now. Yes. Maybe you want to share something about this event that we went last week. It's the kitchen event, and we met a lot of cool startup companies.
Yeah, there are a lot of startups that they are looking for interns or maybe student firms.
Mhm.
So we could just connect with them, we network with LinkedIn, and all of them they talk about their ideas and their projects, and then we could connect with LinkedIn and
Yeah, it was really nice. Yes.
When I was looking at the post, what does it say that where the white part is? I couldn't read that. So in the kitchen, if you have a plant you want to grow or a
It's
plant
to
you-
complete yourself. Then you can do whatever you want.
I don't know, but I guess it's like midway.
If you have a startup and you want to grow your, yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna give the stage to Thomas now. Wanna-
It's really nice that you went. It's always good.
yeah,
Even just for the free dinner. No.
yeah, because you never know who are you talking with, right? Because this guy was there, for example, just because he's now he has this little project of like bringing wine and like some outside Denmark and just selling it here. But he actually works at Lego as a web developer. So it's really good just to talk to him and make a connection, and then you never know. Maybe then he reminds you, and it's like, oh, this girl knows about React, and then we need someone, and then yeah, that's how you do it. Yeah, so it's very important. Are you in the Zoom?
Is it the stand-up thing?
I can share you this. This is always the same.
How they have an idea to do something.
Sorry?
If somebody is not in the so they do not have any idea, so they cannot start something.
What do
How
you?
they can help with the ideas, because if somebody does not have any idea
Uh-huh.
to start something, because these are a startup.
Yeah.
And I think it's the fail
In the-
slide.
in the
It's just-
picture.
It doesn't have a really good, so you can't read it.
Yeah, it's the picture, but in real life we could read it. But I don't remember what it said though.
It's not really.
It's not really.
No. It was changing all the time. Yes. All right. Since you're here, I'm gonna just leave the Zoom. I'm my grandma today, and every time I have to look there, I see my face here like. "Nyeh." All right. Yes. Bye Zoom. Bye future people watching this.
Starting.
You're also in this.
Muting. Thank you.
Hi, Thomas. Nice to see you.
Spoilers. Now you know that we're going to talk about React. Should have hidden it. Okay. All right. That was the wrong one. So why are Zoom UI elements always in like a random position on the screen? So strange. Anyways, how was the first homework after last session? Did you already look into it? Or maybe you're behind on the homeworks.
Everyone done it.
Everyone has done it? Yeah. Cool. Nice. Was it hard? Yeah, sure.
I was following like the instruction homework, but I like read it very fast, and then I just started to do like, and then it was saying like create React app. And so I created it with Read app.
Yes.
And so then I said like, okay, it said create React app, so I deleted everything.
No.
Yes, I did. And then
Oh,
I
no.
did everything in React and
Okay.
and then I Googled what's the difference, why, blah blah. And then okay, but it asked me to do it in React. And then someone asked, was it Nilofer or someone of us asked, should we do it in React or Read app?
Yes.
The answer was like in Read app. But I already submitted my homework.
It's fine. I mean, you can use both. It's just another instance of the curriculum being really outdated. So we really have to get our act together to improve it. And you're going to see this today as well, because I've actually looked at the curriculum and I kind of dismissed it because it's not really useful right now. We have to update it. And this is one part of it, to also update the homeworks. But of course, nothing is going to happen if you use Create React app. It still works. It's just more heavy, and it's no longer. There are no more things being added to it anymore, as far as I know. So it's something that is on the shelf, and you can still use it, but it's. Sorry?
I said something is already on my branch, and it's something.
Yes.
I don't know how many of us made it like this.
It's fine. You can use both. Like, as you will realize that usually there are so many different tools that you can use, and as long as you get the result that you want, everything is fine. Okay, so let's have a look at what week 2 has in store for us. Usually what I would do is I would talk about component lifecycle. And this is very much from, back in the days when React was a little bit different. So it's actually not that important anymore. But what I found is that in the React docs, the new docs, react.dev, Am I actually sharing my screen? I guess I'm not. I thought I had done it, but there's no green element here, so I assume I'm not sharing. Where's the button? There we go. Share. There we go. Now you can all see it. Gonna enlarge the font size a little bit. Oh, I don't have the volume on. Okay, some of these. There's only Helena in there. Okay, whatever. So the docs have a section that's called render and commit. Or rather, we should maybe start by, looking at the main navigation, because what I did is I went to learn, and I think this is a very good place for you as well, because this can teach you already a lot. And then I will just add some commentary, right? So we can use this as a new curriculum for React, basically. And then describing the UI, I guess this is somewhat what we did last time. We looked at components, right? This is also what they say, right? How to write your first React component, when and how to create multi-component files. And if you're ever in doubt about any of these things, you have questions, you can just look it up here and see and try and follow the guide on what they say. Okay, but then if we move on to adding interactivity, and this is what we're going to do today. So we want our website to, or web app, depends on what you're building. We want it to be reacting, right, to stuff that we're doing. And something that kind of matches what we usually would call the life cycle is this render and commit guide, I think. So let's see what it has. So they have these nice illustrations here where they explain a little bit about, okay, rendering. What does it actually do, right? Because we heard this term last week, and you were like, okay, but how? I'm not sure how it works. Like, there's no HTML in the page, right? And this maybe goes a little bit into detail about that. So they split it up in 3 steps: triggering, rendering, and committing. So triggering, it's the stage where React realizes it has to do something, right? So maybe you click on a button and it knows, oh, now I have to do something, right? Rendering is what they call preparing the order in the kitchen. They have this kitchen analogy. So the trigger is basically that the service person comes to the kitchen and is like, okay, we need to do something, right? And then the render is, preparing the stuff in the kitchen. In this case, it's a cart component. And then committing to the DOM is when it actually gets, set into the browser. When React takes your component and then it makes it into HTML, right? This is the rendering part, and then it puts it into the browser. Very simplified. It's not exactly how it works, but this is how you can think of how it works. And then they say, okay, committing, it's when the server brings it to the person who ordered it, right? So this is your user. And then the tray is the browser, and then maybe the service person is the browser. I'm not sure, not quite sure. Maybe, I guess since it has the React logo, it's probably supposed to be React. The metaphor breaks a little bit. Maybe you get the point.
This arrow also means that we are pointing at something, for example,
These blue arrows.
No, I mean head.
No, it's just the React.
Customer.
It's just the React logo.
Because
Oh, yeah, right. Right. So this means this is probably
function component, for example.
No, this is probably the illustration of the mouse cursor in the browser. So it means that this person who's sitting here has been drawn here is supposed to represent the mouse and the user and whoever is behind the screen, right? And is doing all the actions on the.
Yeah, I understand this. I
Yes.
mean, the arrow is like calling something, calling the function. If you want to say that,
Yeah, so if you use the cursor to click somewhere on the screen, you're probably calling a function then. Yeah, if that's what you mean. Okay, but this is basically the life cycle that it goes through, right? There are only 3 steps, and of course there's a lot more, you know, behind the scenes that is happening. Otherwise React wouldn't be that heavy. But this is how you can think of a reactivity and how your application works. And then they have some examples here, which I'm not sure if I want to dive too much into. Initial render. Okay, so this is maybe a little bit more interesting, but since we haven't talked about state, I'm not sure if this is the right place to talk about it. So maybe we'll come back to that later. See if there's anything more here that we need to talk about. No, I think that was it. So this gave you, you know, a little overview of how does the life cycle work. So of course, what you have to remember is that this is not the final state, right? So you get the website, it looks the way that you designed your components, right? But then as soon as the user does something, right, they scroll, click on a button, they navigate to a different page, then you have to do this all over again, right? Then React has to detect, oh, now the guy with the cursor, he wants something else, right? And then it's going to do the same thing again. It's going to determine which components it has to prepare. It's going to prepare the components, and then it's going to put them in the browser. Does that make sense? It's like a loop. All right. Let's go on, because this is getting very theoretical if we go into it too much. Sure.
the commit means put something in browser.
That's a good question, because terminology is important, and you know commit from Git, right? And it's a similar concept, but it's something completely different. In Git, committing your stage changes, it's like something that you do manually, right? Like you write a commit message, stuff like that. In terms of the React documentation, when they talk about committing, it means that React is basically making the final version of what is going to show in the browser. So there's no more changes being applied when it's committed. And this is basically what committing means, right? Like you're promising, I'm going to do this. And this is what I landed on, right? This is what I'm committing to. And then here they just use it to describe, you know, React made the page, how it should look like, and it's going to commit it and send it to the browser. That makes sense? Okay. Yeah. So I inserted this because we have some exercises today, and maybe you want to do some styling there. But and sorry about the jumping a little bit. This is also because I restructured this a little bit, so as to not look at the curriculum too much. But I think this is quite important, so that's why I, you know, put it in here. What you've been doing last week, maybe you already added some styling. I think that was the, you know, go-to way of doing it. You have a CSS file, you import it in your React file. Each component has a CSS file that makes it very easy to reason about what's going on. And I'm not sure, does React actually scope the CSS to the components automatically? Not sure. Okay, never mind. I think it does. If you, I think it's actually Vite that is doing that. So if you import a CSS file in a component, and you have some classes in that file, take a look at the output in the browser. I think what you will see, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but some frameworks do this. I think what you will see is that it will prepend, like put in front of your classes, it will put another class for each component, so that styles don't leak out of your component. But try it out. So
Could you please repeat that?
I can try and say an example. So let's say you make a component that has a headline, H1. And then in your CSS, you write H1 should be color red, right? Then the way how CSS works, all of your headlines in this entire page should be red, right? But you only want the style to apply to the component. So what some frameworks will do is they will scope the CSS to the component. So they will add a component one class, for example. And then they will also add that to your component HTML. So that the style, the color red, it will only apply to H1s within this component and not within the entire page.
Would it be, so we normally use the class, so because we can have different classes. So we just refer to the class or just point to the intended class that we want, so it would solve the problem. Do you mean that? For example, we have a p tag and with a class, for example, something.
No, this is not what I mean. I think I can show you an example later. Let's not go too deep into this now. But another thing that I wanted to, another way that I want to present is that you can also have your CSS in JavaScript. You don't have to make a CSS file. If you have a really small project, for example, or you're using some sort of tooling around CSS in JavaScript, then you will do that. From what I feel, like it has been shifting a little bit more towards that we're using CSS files again, because that's just easier, and CSS has been gotten much better in the last years.
You mean inline style?
But this is basically inline style, but in React, right? So if you have HTML tags in your JSX, then you can pass an object as a style prop. And what you have to remember, and this is why I include these slides, just to tell you so that you remember when you ever do it, you have to convert your CSS properties to camel case. So here's an example. This is your CSS, text align center. And then what you need to do in your object is you write text align center, like in camel case, right? No dash. Yeah. Here's actually an example from the React docs that I modified. So you see this li tag. Maybe it's a bit too small. I don't know if you can see it. Too small? You can see it? I can't zoom, so this is what we have. So I changed this li tag to have a style attribute. And then I pass this object, text align right. And as you can see, it's now on the right side. And don't be confused by these two brackets here, right? It just means that the outer bracket is for the attribute. So you always have to wrap the value in this outer bracket, unless it's a string. And then the inner bracket, it means it's an object. So you have an object within the style attribute.
Two properties.
Then you write the comma here and then the next one, because it's just an object. And this is also why some people prefer this mechanism, because you can actually compute your CSS in JavaScript. So you can say, depending on this variable, I want the color to be red, right? You can't really do that in CSS. You can use CSS variables, but you can't really do this functional programming in CSS that you can do in JavaScript. And this is why some people put the CSS inline into the JSX files. But don't focus on it too much. I just wanted you to have heard about this.
I think you wanted just to say was that, so do it locally, not in CSS part. Yes?
This is a way of putting CSS in your JSX, in your React application. This is one way. Can you repeat the question?
Some companies like have item I think so, at least, and we can add the styles for flash on this item.
Yeah, so you can add some,
Add five. Or five, the style.
yeah, you can also reuse these styles, of course, because they're just objects. You can have a JavaScript file or TypeScript file with your objects, and then you can just apply them to all of the components that you want the style to apply to. There's no right or wrong in this case. It's just different ways of structuring your application, structuring your CSS and your JSX. Just keep in mind that it gets really confusing if you mix those approaches, right? Like, of course, in your homeworks and, you know, maybe not your homeworks, but in the exercises and whatever, your own not trial, but, you know, demo projects where you're trying some stuff, it doesn't really matter. You can mix and try different stuff. But if you want anyone else to read the code, like in your homework, then keep it to one mechanism. Okay, let's finish this up. I've been talking way too long about this already. Props. We talked about it last time. Can you remember anything about props? The properties of the component, yes. Right, you can use them in the components. Anything else? What can I pass as a prop?
We send the parameter from up to component.
Yeah, so the parent sends
To
the
parent.
props to the child. And what kind of data can I put there?
Everything.
Everything, exactly.
But we can't change them.
You have to what?
We can't change them.
We can't change them within the component, exactly, yes. Let me see what, actually, there's an exercise here apparently. Okay. I'm used to having the screen where it shows me the preview here of what's coming next, but this is not really possible with the Zoom, so it's like a surprise for me what's going next. Okay, so I think that it would be best to try out the props exercise that we have in the React docs, because I think it's much more useful than the exercise we have in the curriculum. So try this. I'm gonna, state is gonna be the next one, but there's no link on this one. Okay. So the URL is this one. It's react.dev, learn passing props to a component, but you can also find it in navigation if you just go to react.dev. So it's learn, and then it's under describing the UI, and then it's passing props to a component. Are you all on this page? Not yet. So these pages in the learn section, they're all structured the same way. You have some chapters in the top where it explains and it goes further into detail the further you go down. And then it has a recap, which might be useful for you to just, you know, read. And then what I want you to try is the challenges. So there are 3 challenges here. And you can actually just do them right within your browser. Like they have this little editor here where you can write them. So then you don't have to copy it into your Read project. But you can also copy it if you want to. But just keep in mind, we're gonna have a look at the time. So the fastest way is probably to just do it in here. And then you can, of course, also just copy the result and then save it so that you have it to look at or whatever. But they describe the challenge here. So this is the exercise, and then you solve it within this editor, and you have this little preview here. Yeah, just take the 3 exercises, and we're gonna talk about them in a bit.
It's gonna be very cold when it's doing that. I will just. It's kind of exactly the same patient experience. So you want to extract it into a real moment, then pass the values further. So then you use the same thing with the values.
Yes.
Think that is possible, but you can just pass the values. You can do for loop, but you can also just do it right. But I think the most important part of the task is to move the profile into reactive one. Because like these two, and they exactly the same, but just with different values. So you need to extract them into reactive component, and then have a variable, and that's a variable from the parent component. Then it doesn't really matter whether it's an array or. Yeah, so you will really say in terms of that. Maybe this is a good in for you. I've not tested this, but I think that if you refresh the page, they will be gone. It could be, that's also fine. Yes, it's just yeah, but I think it's like you think you want to first that you have to talk to your VS Code and how you was the data, it's not a problem. You can do this. But first, yeah, I would recommend you this. Because the point is to, try to do this first and then we can do it. It's in your mind, one step at a time instead of instant file. Yeah. Yes. But you can, because, but you can just, you can have multiple ones in the same thing. And you can get another one, that's fine. And then revert to this. Yeah, but Thomas said you can make it into your own files in your local machine, but it's faster to do it here because you have very little data to do it. So, yeah, so yeah, exactly. You can do it just. Yes. Nothing positive.
Yes.
What's it? Close the hole. But you're exactly the same, right? From extreme to perspective, they are the same, but different levels. So you extract it as a component where props, like the name is a prop and the description is and so on, yes. And then you test them from the different components. Yeah. How can you make props or this? This is a component. So you just need to do some assembly. So the other is a component. So you can make another component that does the function that returns the children. And the function takes that props as an input. Yeah. So yeah. If it doesn't work, just go ahead. Yeah, you can just go. How you work? Yeah. It's not like this, it's not a representation. So if you want you just have the function. For example, what do you name, and then the function, and then you can make, yeah. And you can just do it here, so you don't have to do that. Yeah. Yeah. But the flux can also be, you know, a function of the curve basis each of the function. And then you find out something. Yeah. And then instead of doing this, then you can do the curve basis and so first thing you can try to do is copy the section just like this and return here. Because the y is returning. One day. Yeah. So instead of this is going to be first result. So this is, and the position is going to be first result. And the other is going to be first result. So that's going to be this one. The first thing you can do is to extract this one into. This using project because it's faster. It's such a-
Yeah, it doesn't really work. For-
So Thomas is saying this is a better editor here, if you press on fork.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's try to,
Yeah, actually.
because then it's okay. So then you get a better, yeah.
Yeah, not the preview section. It didn't work with all my.
Hmm.
It was just loading and loading.
Okay, maybe some ad blocker that you can use?
Oh, I'm not thinking about that.
No, I get it, but sometimes they break like stuff.
Okay.
You can actually report to you ad blocker and something you can work and then something to fix it.
Because it's annoying to scroll.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, one way of working with this is here. Another way is in your VS Code. And another way is you can click on this little button up here. With this fork. Can you see that one? And then it will basically open something called Code Sandbox. And that's, it uses somewhat the same layout as VS Code.
The inner ones, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, the two components, so as you see the section. Is that true?
Oh, that's true. You can sign in with GitHub. Then you can change it.
Yeah, but you can have multiple functions in the same file.
Yes.
So each function is a component. They indicate like function, only do one equal, of course, you know that, but, you can just record it. Yeah, you can sign in with GitHub, and then you can. Yeah. Sorry. Want the box to so. But what are you missing? What are you missing? So if you want to get something, if you want to use something or something, what do you have to do for the function? There's something missing in this function.
Yeah.
What do you have to do? You need to return. No, and also need to return. Otherwise it looks random. And then multi-line we need to do the, yeah, exactly. And then close, no, not this one. The, what's the brand? Yes. One here and one by the. Yeah. Yeah. And then these variables are here, but you need to define them as an input, right?
Yeah, so what I can do is that.
You need to do curly braces here.
With props maybe?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yeah, that's you need to props, and you can, but you can do props as one thing, but you can also destructure it, so. I don't. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you thought about that.
Did you talk about the destructuring thing or no? Okay, no, so then just props, yeah.
Props and get the reference of it.
Yeah. Yeah, then you can do props, but person name, props, dot something, something. You need to have this, but yeah.
So.
Yes, but this is not here. This is the other, because when you go, yeah, yes. That's why let's get this done first, and then we can put the other parts. Mm. It's fine to be global, but in real life, you need to call this on HTTP function to get the values. Exactly, yes. Yeah, but for now, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I think it doesn't matter. This is because like in the future it's going to be an HTTP or API call, but if it works either way, it's fine. Whatever you prefer. Yeah. Yes. There's always multiple ways to do the same thing. So whatever, just what you like. Yeah. I think for example here. Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, you can because you can keep this one as this, and this one, yeah, you don't have to be an.
And so what about the exclusion that we have?
Yeah, but width and height are the same. But yes, for example, height will be the person name, which is fine. This one will be different. But the others are fine, right? Yeah, just not to confuse it. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I'm still need the compromise.
In the part thing or
Yeah, for because these are fixed.
yeah, but you can just you will need the curl braces if it's variable, something that changes. Yeah.
But does it make difference if you use that? So it will be.
Because JavaScript or React will start to say, oh, it's a variable, but I can't find it, so I'll show you some errors. So, but you can try. Yeah.
Okay, so this has been 20 minutes. Yeah, don't worry if you haven't, if you're not finished. Just to follow the program for today, let's have a 5-minute break. You can grab some coffee, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. And then after 5 minutes, I'm gonna go through the exercise and give you some hints on how to solve it. And then we're gonna move on. Okay?
Very focused.
Yeah, trying to keep the time. It's frustrating if you can't finish the exercises. I get that.
It's a challenge, like.
And remember that if we have time in the end, we can always come back to these exercises. Don't worry.
If you want to actually make it a component as well, this section, or maybe like, you know, like profile or like the sign post or like that. I use one. I also got one section. Okay? No.
How can I? And it's like very easy.
Can I still your name? Can I see your name? What's up? Kommen wir zum Mund. Okay. Einmal Teil auf der links. Was ist das? Auch Herz. Das ist der Defekt. Lassen wir mal einfach den. Lassen wir es mal. Einmal zum Mund. Oh. Vor allem die Oh, I haven't laid out the good. Sorry, when you saw data science, you already have them.
No, let's do whatever.
Yeah, which is the same. The box, but a little bit accurately, but then here it's an accurate box.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the gallery.
But we close.
Yeah.
It's almost like somebody's trying to reverse. This should be all should be the name, right?
Yeah, I suggest you shall move your wheel.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good. Hope it's growth for you. That's so.
That's not
Yeah, we can go through different ways and crops that things.
Yeah, but the other one should probably be profession, but it's but just remember the piece, because this one is probably that one there, right? So.
All right. Let's look at how to solve this challenge. If you still want to solve it yourself, you can, you know, pretend you're not hearing anything. But I think this has been a good, you know, warm up for you again, because the more you do this, the more you get familiar with how to make components in different scenarios and stuff like that. So don't take it too hard if it's difficult. You'll get there. Okay, so I'm let's read the challenge again, because the most important part is understanding what you need to do usually. So let's focus on that. font could be a little bit bigger. So it says, this gallery component contains some very similar markup to profiles. We agree on that, right? We have a section here. And this one we have twice actually. We have both of them have a headline, image, a list, so they look very similar. That's true. Okay. Now we get to what we need to do. Extract a profile component out of it to reduce the duplication. You'll need to choose what props to pass to it. So this tells us a couple of things. It tells us that we have to create a profile component. It should render some of the stuff that now is in the gallery. And then we need to use the profile within the gallery. And also it tells us that we have to pass some props to the profile. So you can also have a component that has no props, but this already tells us that, okay, this component is going to have props, right? So I'm going to do this in this fork thing, because the font is just bigger, so you can actually read it. So any ideas of what to do as the first step? I already put the cursor at a good location. So what do you think could be the first step? Create a component. So how do I create a component? Function. Profile. Okay. So sometimes it can get very confusing very fast if you start out with, designing the API of the component, because basically when you define what props a component has, you're designing an API for that component. And then, think of API not as, REST API that you go to fetch something, but think of API as a contract between you and the component, right? Like you design how to interact with the component, what data to pass it and what it's going to do then. And we also call that API because it's also an interface. This is how you interface with the component. So when I say API, you know what I mean. So let's not start by designing the API for this component. Let's just start by rendering some stuff, right? So this is usually what I do when I make a new React component. I'll just hard code some stuff so that I know that the HTML is actually working, all looks the way that it should look, and then we can make it dynamic, right? So which parts, if we take the first profile, where should I start, cutting stuff out of the gallery? Somebody says here, somebody says here.
Because it is fixed for all of them.
Exactly. So there's only one H1. So I'm going to leave that in the gallery because this is the headline of the gallery. So I'm going to cut this section. Okay. Is there, yeah, cut. And then I go here and I say paste, which is not actually here. So I was going to do Command V. Okay, so now let's see what happens. Okay, now we've cut it, so there's only one profile. So now we're going to do, what are we going to do here now? Oh, okay, that was not what I wanted. What are we going to do here?
have to write a function name.
We have to write function here.
No, function name.
The function name,
Component name.
the component name, exactly. So, I mean, if you say function name, that's actually technically correct because we made a function that is a component. So how do you write component names in React? Yeah, those brackets, right? And you see, like, if you're using an IDE, so Visual Studio Code, for example, VS Code, it's an IDE. It's an integrated developer environment. I think that's what it's called. So when people talk about, oh, your IDE, this is your editor, right? That they mean. So when you're using an IDE, try and, take the help that is given you, right? So here in this case, it tells me, oh, you have two things here, actually three things that have this, purple box. And that means it's a function, right? So you have you have this gallery and you have this profile, and then you have a default, but we can ignore that one. So I can just click that one, and then it will, automatically put this in. And why would I do that? Because I would just write a profile, right? It's an easy word to write. But why would I want to click on what the editor is suggesting to me? Any ideas? Exactly. It's really easy to make mistakes, to, type something wrong, and then you're sitting there hours and hours spending on figuring out why it doesn't work. So it's usually the best way to just follow whatever your IDE is suggesting you, and then accepting that, because then you can rule out that there are any typos. And then I have to close this tab. So you have seen these kind of tags that are self-closing, right? So if your component has no content inside of it, then you can just do it like this. Or I can also do this. Like this, the same. Okay, let's see. We still only get one profile here. Why could that be? Any ideas?
If we want to have two, we should call it again, or we should put it again. We should have a join in our function.
Yes, exactly. So this is a really easy mistake to do, and it still happens to me when I code React, that I forget to return from the component function, because then nothing is being rendered, right? Because React will just be happy about not returning anything. Because if you remember from JavaScript, not returning anything means returning undefined. And undefined in React world is just render nothing, right? So that's something to remember. Anyways, now we have a profile here. So let's see what happens if we put another one. Okay, now she's duplicated, right? So that's not really what we want. So now we have to add some props. And the way that we've usually been doing this is like this, right? You have the props parameter. And then what would you put into props here in this component?
Name.
The name. So this is the name, right? So how am I going to do this best? I can copy it from the other page. So let's say, so this is the name, and this is actually also the name, right? So then we can write props.name. So now by doing this, we're actually already defining the API for our component, because now we're saying that this component, it has the name prop, because we start using it, right? If you start using a TypeScript, then you will see that it will be a bit more explicit what API your component has, because you have to define the types in a way like this, for example. But if we're just working with plain JavaScript, we kind of have to read through the entire component to see what properties are we actually using. So to know which properties can we give the component. So let's put the name. We don't need the duplicate. So then we write name as a prop here, right? Now I need the name again. Okay, now the name is back. Actually, this one, I'm not sure why this doesn't make sense to put it in. Yeah, because if you put this in quotes, okay, I can't go back apparently. What we will see is that it just says, oh, this is very hard to see for you. It just says, you know, props.name. Because when we just put it in quotes, it means this is a string. Don't do anything about it, right? We have to put it like this so that it will actually be a variable. Right?
What if
No.
you get inside the curly braces? Can't we do that?
Not sure what you mean.
Inside the curly braces to put double quotations and then props.name.
Like this?
Yeah, inside that.
No,
Please.
this won't work. You see now you have props.name. This is not something specific to React. It's basically just how JavaScript works, right? Like if you wrap something in double quotes, it's a string. So inside of it, nothing will be interpolated or like replaced. Of course, you can do some stuff with template literals, you know those, right? These backticks, you do this, and then suddenly it will work again, right? Okay, let's not get too deep into this. What else do we need to, you know, put as a prop? Profession, yes. So they both have different professions. So let's put this here, props.profession. Okay. Then we have to put it here. Okay, let me close this again so we have a little bit more space. Profession. Okay. And yeah, I'm not sure if I should also do the rest of it. Yeah, let's do the full example. Then you have the entire thing. Image, yes, correct. So we'll take this, place it with prop. And now you see that the formatting has actually made this nice into, you know, several lines now. So I don't have to have this really long line. Oh, yeah, for some reason, sometimes I can't go back. I can't undo. It's strange. That was the image. Still works. What else do we have? Awards. What do you think? What kind of structure is awards? Array. What did you say? Amount. Yes, that's one way of doing it. But you see, if we use an array, we could just know how many there are, right? Exactly. Yes, good idea. So let's replace this with props.awards. Can you remember what we used last time? We want to show an array as a list. We can use map join, exactly. It's much easier. So we'll join it with a comma in the space. And let's put the array. So how do I pass an array as a prop? What's the syntax for that? Curly braces, normal brackets. Yes. Correct. You have that stuff figured out. Okay, now we have some awards. Let's see. Oh, rookie mistake. What did we forget? Sorry? So it's just showing, you know, the code instead of running the code. Curly brackets, exactly. Okay, and then this also needs to be the length, right? Nice. Then we have discovery. So let's do this. All right. So last one. What remains? What else do we need to do now? Discovery, I already did that. But but you see there's something going on in our gallery now. We have a profile and then we have a section. This is maybe too easy, the question.
Just delete the information.
Not quite, because we have to convert the other one into a profile component as well. So now we have our profile, we can use it as a template, just copy it, and then I can move the dynamic information into the props, right? Name, okay, let's see, image, profession, some awards, and the discovery. Oh, that's quite a long discovery here. Great. Now we can delete this one. Okay. And that basically solved the exercise. I hope that you have some more understanding of props now and how they work, how to make components, props. There's one thing that we haven't looked at, and it's basically a JavaScript feature that is being used very often in React. And and that feature is, I think it's called destructuring. Let's double check. Destructuring. Yeah. So have you seen any of this before? I'm not sure if we talked about this in JavaScript. Maybe we didn't. Okay, fair enough. So this is a fairly new JavaScript feature. New. Been there for, I don't know, 10 years. Same. Yeah, so this hasn't been there, you know, in JavaScript from day one. But it makes it a little bit more easy to work with variables and to work with objects and to work with arrays. So we're not going to talk about arrays today. You can look into this if you want to. Actually, maybe we should talk about arrays because, as you mentioned, this is being used for hooks. So, okay, never mind. But let's first talk about the objects and how to destructure them. So let's do the thing here. So what I could do is to make this a little bit more readable, I could say, you know, name equals props.name. And then I could do this, right? And then I could do the same with, you know, image. Okay. But this, it's very tedious, right? You have to write a lot of lines just to have some shorter names. So this is where destructuring comes into play. So what you can do, instead of writing these two lines, you can write, you know, the curly braces. It's not an object, it's the structured version of your object. So this is, it can be very hard to understand. So don't struggle if you don't understand it, right away. If we have these curly braces on the left side of the equals sign, it means that we're, pulling something out of the structure of the object. If we have the curly braces on the right side, it means that we are creating a structure, right? So here I can define my object, right? Have some parameters. But what I do here is I take the stuff that is in the object and I pull it out. So what do we know about our props objects? What do we know that it contains? Name and image, yeah, and a couple more. But let's take the name and the image. So what I can do is I can write some of the attributes here that I know. And then I can, oh, that's not how it works. And then I can pull them out, destructure them out of the structure that I have. So in this case, I have some props. It's an object, and I know it has name and image. So I can write it like this. And then what JavaScript will do is it will assign a variable just like we did before manually, but it will do it, for you. So as soon as you write const curly braces name equals props, then JavaScript will go ahead and it will define a variable name as const, and it will assign the value of props.name. So the variable name matches what is, behind the dot here, right? So you can't, in the first place, or like in the first instance, you can't really do something like, name2 equals name, because there's only one place you specify what you want, right? And this is here. You specify I want name, and the variable that name is assigned to will be called name, right? So this is something you have to be aware of. But it works in very much the same way. So now we have name and image, and they're variables and they're defined. And let's forget about this for now. That makes sense so far.
Charles said that also this structure would help us to execute lines simultaneously rather than.
Yes. So what I took, 2 lines to do here, it can be done in 1 line. And then if you, got this concept, there's an even shorter way of doing this. Because you can put this right here where you have the props in the function attribute. So you can put it like this. Okay, and now it's complaining that props is no longer defined because now we've put this here, right? But there's a great thing that JavaScript also has, is called REST. So you can put the REST into another variable. So the REST that you didn't, destructure, you can put it in the variable again. So we want this to be in props. So then it should work again. So you don't necessarily have to destructure all of the attributes of the object. You can put some of them into a REST. But just for a good measure, so if you are making a component, it's actually very nice and tidy to do it like this. And then to specify all of the props that it has, especially if you're not using TypeScript. Because in that way, you have some sort of documentation of which props your component accepts, right? So let's put all of them in here. We have profession. So then we have to write profession instead. We have awards. Let's put it here as well. And then we have discovery. Okay, save, and it still works. So now we have a record of what kind of props our component can take. Does it make sense?
Sorry, what did you ask?
So now we have, some sort of documentation of what our component can take in terms of props. And at the same time, we also made them into, const variables right in the first line of the component. So we don't actually have to write this anymore, because this is already done here, right? And my question was if that makes sense. Shorter and easier, yes.
I think it's easier also from the map when you try to use the component, then you can just look here at the first line and see what kind of properties I can pass through to
Exactly.
the function.
So if somebody wants to use your profile component now, they can just see that this component can take name, image, profession, awards, and discovery. Before, when you only had props here, the person would need to read through the entire component to know which props does it actually take, right? And this is sort of a flaw of JavaScript because it doesn't have any way for you to define what should this object look like. So this is much easier in TypeScript, but for now we're using JavaScript, and this is the best way that we can get. Okay.
Can you explain how we handle the image, how we can get URL?
Yes, you mean this function here?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was already here before. It's in a different file. So you see it gets imported from utilities. And it's a function that, constructs a URL to an image hosting site. And then what they did here is they uploaded these images and saved the IDs, these images. And so when we request the images, they just put the ID to the URL, and then we get the right image. Does that make sense?
No.
No, okay. Let me try rephrasing. So when the people who made this example created it, they uploaded 2 images to a service called Imager. It's this IMGUR. It's the image hosting service. And then they noted down the IDs of these 2 images that they uploaded, right? And those are the IDs that we're using here. This one and this one. So I don't know any more IDs for this image hosting service. So that's also why I can't show any other images here. I can only show the 2 that have been given. But what they did is they made a function that can, build this URL to the image hosting service by giving it the image ID and giving it a size, and then it will make a URL. You can see it here. Okay, let's scroll to the right. So it built this URL that starts with the host name, and then it / and then it puts the ID. And since we don't put any size, it just doesn't apply the size. And then it puts the extension, which is JPEG.
Should apply size because it has people already.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it might actually apply the size because the size is S. So yeah, this S in the end is the size. Sorry about that. Yeah, good catch. But of course, this is very overly complicated. If you just have 2 images, like they could have just put the URL. But the reason why they've made this function is that there's actually a second exercise where you modify this function. And you can do this exercise at home if you want to. And there's also a third exercise actually, where you can see how you pass some JSX as a prop, which is actually, oh, actually, no, that's not what it is. It's a children prop. So it tells you how to make, you know, how to make a component where there's something inside here, right? Actually, I can show you right now. It's quite easy. So how do I get, you know, this stuff that I put inside of the profile? Exactly, using children. So React puts a default prop on all of your components. It's called children. I hope that I remember this correctly. I'm not telling you something wrong. So let's see if we can see the comment. Let's make a new li here. Okay. And then we just put children here. Okay, see what happens. And as you can see, it renders the children. In this case, we only put one child, and it's a string. But you can totally, you know, go wild with this. You can have anything inside of it. So I can put some HTML here, and then it suddenly will put the H2 here, right? So this is a very powerful way to make components that are parents of other components, and then render the children within your own component. All right, let's move on. Something that I promised you today was looking at state, and this is what we're going to do next. So not the Empire State, but you know, use state hook. So yes.
Could I ask something, please? Can you copy and paste the code that you have written in a file or in the class channel, please?
Yeah, I can do that. Sure.
Thank you.
At the end of the session, I will try and see if I can save the sandbox, and then I post a link. Yeah. But remember this, you don't have to follow, you know, every single line of what I write in this example. Of course, I can see, you know, the impulse to, you know, have this library of things, and then, oh, I want to go back to this and look at it. But what you really want to have is a sense of where can you find this information online, right? Like look at the React docs, look at the react.dev site, and all of the information is in there, so you can find it again. So don't rely on my examples as your knowledge base. Okay, so let's talk about state. I really like this headline that they put in the react.dev site, where they say the state is a component's memory. So when you put the props, we already, when you pass props to a component, we already established that props are read-only. You can't change them within the component. But sometimes you want to change some stuff within your component when the user does some interaction or when some event happens. And this is what you save in your component's memory, in your state. So some people, they try this in the beginning when they start out with React. They will put some variables in the component, like a let variable, for example. Then they will try to update it, and then it doesn't really work that way, right? So the state in a React component is a way for us to write variables and change them and have the component update whenever they change. So whenever there's a change in your state, React will know that, and it will update the component, as we saw in the lifecycle, right? It will then go to the kitchen, prepare a new component, and serve it. And when I say update a component, it means re-render. So the way that we use state in React components and especially function components with using hooks. And maybe have you heard about hooks, what it is and how it works? Maybe not that much. So this is maybe the first hook that you get to know. Hooks is a concept that React has introduced with function components. And it's basically a convention of how to implement this kind of functionality. For example, a state hook. And it takes the form of return for the use state hook. It takes the form of returning a state and a setter. And the setter is a function. So this is where, you know, array destructuring comes into place. But I'll get into that a little bit more when we look at the example. So for now, you just have to know that state in React, it has a state where you have your actual variable, right? And then it has a setter function where you set the state. So why do you think it is that we have to have these separated? Like, why can't we just say, okay, state equals this? Any ideas? Yeah, so it's a way for React to know that we update the variable. Because React works on an assumption that is very difficult to tell whether you've updated the variable. So its way for you to update the variable is to use the function that React provides. So then when you use that function, React can know that you've updated the variable. So it will then update the variable for you. So you don't assign it with the equal sign, but you use the function to update it. Because that way, React can re-render the component when you update the variable. And one thing to keep in mind is that state is not always guaranteed to be up to date. So this might not make too much sense for you right now, but if you're making some complex components, you might want to update your state based on the previous state. So let's say you have a counter, right? You want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't always be sure that when you take the state, that it then has the current number. And the way to, you know, work around that is that the setter function, it can take a callback that will then give you the current state. But this is, yeah, I can see that without context, this is very hard to understand for you. So let's maybe have a look at an actual example. So this is where we have some exercises again. And you might notice that we have some exercise in the curriculum that works with some to-do stuff. And I have a feeling that maybe this ties into the homework as well. But I decided to ignore that one as well. And so I'm sorry if you have to, you know, redo this for the homework maybe. But we're going to focus on a different exercise. And it's the challenge in the components memory page. So let's have a look at that challenge. So this is I think this is a very good challenge or exercise because it's very similar to something that maybe you would get in a job, right? So we have a gallery here and it needs to be completed. So when you press next, on the last sculpture, okay, let's try that. Oh, okay, it crashes, right? So what they want you to do is fix that crash. But before you dive into this exercise, let's have a look at the code that is already there so that we're all on the same page. No, okay. All right. So now I've talked about, you know, the use state hook and all of that. So let's look a little bit at the anatomy of this hook, right? How do you use it? I hope this is very familiar to you now after the presentation. So we have this is the use state hook, right? This is how you call it. It's called use state. And then it takes one argument. And this is the initial state. So this is what you define once. And this is what React takes as, you know, the baseline. So if you never change your state, if you never update your state, in this case, it will be 0. And then it will return an array from this use state hook. And the way we're doing it here is we're destructuring the array, right? So let me show you how this would look if we would do it the manual way. So we would say, you know, use state array maybe, or whatever we want to call it. And then we would need to define, okay, index is use state array 0, and set index is use state array 1. So in the very same way that we can destructure objects, we can also destructure arrays. And we use the square brackets, same as we use to define arrays. Same way it works with objects. Have it on the left side of the equal sign, you're extracting, you're destructuring from the array. And then the first item is the first one in the array, right? The second one is the second one in the array. So this is why I have to write 0 and 1, because the array starts counting at 0, to do it manually, right? So these 3 lines, they can be replaced by this one line here. Okay. There are a few concepts that you need to learn at the same time. Yeah, I realize that this is a bit of a challenge, but okay, this is why we're here, right? Okay, so now we understood that the use state hook, it takes a default value, it returns an array, and the first item in the array is our state. And we call it index in this case. We can call it whatever we want. As you see down here, we have another state where it's called show more. Right? We can also call our setter function. We can also call it whatever we want. But there's a convention in React that you should follow, which says put set in front of the name and then put the name of the state. So in this case, it would be set index, right? In this case, it is set show more. If I were to rename this to, you know, show less, then I would also rename the function to set show less. Right? You don't have to do this. It doesn't influence functionality. You can also call this B, and it will still work, but it will be hella confusing, right? So this is why we don't do that.
Before we jump to that, could you please explain line 6, why we have assigned user state 0 to that?
Yeah, so this was my way of showing you that when you don't know about destructuring an array, then you would do it in this way, right?
Because I can understand line 7 and 8, so we are just defining the index 0 and 1, but not line 6.
Well, this is very similar to line 5, right? We're assigning a variable here to the result, or we are assigning the result of the use state hook to this variable, right? And then to get to the state and the setter, we have to actually go and take the first argument of the array and the second argument of the array. This, I mean, if everybody would need to do this, nobody would have designed hooks like that, right? Nobody would have said, okay, let's return an array from the hook. And then everybody has to do, you know, 0, 1, 2. It's just really confusing and cumbersome to do that. The reason why hooks were designed like this is that JavaScript has this feature where it can, you know, destructure from an array. So basically the design of the language informed the design of this hook. Like it influenced how the makers of React made this. So don't think too much about this. It was just to show you how it would be done if you wouldn't know about destructuring, right? But since now we know about destructuring, we use it. It is much easier. Okay?
What kind of value can you state?
Yeah, what kind of value can you put here, right? This is the default value, you know? So what kind of stuff can I put in a state? Everything, yeah, that's actually true. However, and you probably won't remember this when you when you get to the point, but there are some advanced structures that when you put them in a state, React might not necessarily know that it updated. So if you're getting too fancy, then maybe your component won't update when you update your state. But yeah, forget about this for now. If you use, you know, numbers, arrays, objects, strings, booleans, it'll work just fine.
Can I just go a few steps back and ask few questions before understanding how this works? Because
Yes.
I am unable to understand what is use state. And
Okay.
zero. So what I see here is what is state in React, and it says that it's a variable that allows React components to manage and store data that changes over time.
Yes.
Which means that we can re-render these information over time, right? Like, is it what I'm reading or?
Yes. So what I tried to say earlier was that what some people will try is they will be like this, right? Okay, why can't I just do this, right? I want some memory in my component, right? I want an index, so this will be shown here. Shown here as the index, and show the right image. Why can't I just have a variable? And that's a really good question. This comes back to the design of React, because React has to know when something changes in your component so that it can re-render it. Think back to this, right? So in order to prepare your component in the component kitchen, it needs to know that something has changed in your component. And if you only change this index, the value of this index variable, it won't know that. It's a limitation that we have to work with. So the way for React to know that you changed the index is to use a function to update the index. And then React will update the variable for you. So it will update this one whenever you call this function with a new value. So this is the way how you manage the memory in the state, in the component. You use state. Does that answer one part of your question?
I don't really know.
Okay. I think the other part that you were confused about is, okay, what are hooks actually, and why are we using this weird thing? And it's a bit hard to explain, to be honest, because hooks can be a very difficult concept to wrap your head around. And I think that React, creators of React haven't really anticipated how strange it can be to someone who is new to React. But the more you use React, the more you make your own components, maybe even make your own hooks, the more sense it will make to you. So at some point you will actually forget that it doesn't make sense. So I guess that's how every learning experience works. But I have heard from people that hooks are quite hard to understand. And for me, it's just very difficult to get into this position again where I don't understand it, like a couple of years ago. But I can try and do that. So when you look at the hook call here, use state, it's a function, right? And you don't really have to know what happens inside that function. It's something that React manages. But what you have to know is that the function returns all the stuff that you need, right? It returns the state and it returns the function to update the state. Okay. Not okay. All right. So let's maybe look a little bit at this component and how it works. So this component is using two states. Now my drafts folder is full. Okay, whatever that means. Well, this component has two states, right? So it has one state, it's called index. And this state, what type does it have? Can you tell me from this line? Yeah, it's a number, right? So the default of this index is 0. And that's basically all we know about this state now. We have another state here. Which type is that one? Boolean, exactly. So it has a default of false. And it's called show more. And this is all we know for now. So let's go down a little bit more and try to find where we use this state. And we can find it by looking at the variable name, right? So index and show more. So if I double click index, I see that there are a couple of places here where we use the index. Yeah, sure.
Can we write, for example, A equal to false, for example, and then we put A in parentheses here instead of false, for example, before line 6. We write this here, for example.
Like this?
We put A in user state. Yeah, inside the parentheses.
No, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, like this.
Like this?
Before line 6. Because we want to use, for example, this one or before line 5, for example. And then we put A inside parentheses in line 7. Yeah, instead of us.
Here?
Is it
Yes,
okay?
of course.
Can you understand this?
Yes. Yes. But one thing.
Is it fine? What means A?
Yes, I wouldn't do that because it just adds a layer of complexity that you don't need. But one thing that you have to keep in mind with React components is that every time the component renders, React goes through all of the lines in the component, right? So the reason why you can't just use let index, for example, is that every time React renders the component, it would redefine the index to be your default. And the workaround for that is to use the state, right? So the state will make sure that once it's been defined, even if you re-render the component and you run this code again, it will still keep the current state. It will keep the memory of the component. So it won't go back to 0 in that case, right? So where was I going with this? Right. So the index state, we use it to show the current sculpture, right? So we have a list of sculptures and we use the index to look up the current sculpture that we want to show. And then when we click on this button, the next button, we trigger this handle next click action, right? And within this function, we call the set index. So we modify the memory of the component. So what does this line do? Can you tell me? Exactly. So index is being added 1 two, yeah, two, we add one to the index. And then we set it again as the new index by using the function. So when we call this set index function, which is the setter of our state, React knows that, hang on, the index has changed. I have to re-render the component, right? Okay. So this is how we use the useState hook. This is how we work with state. It's completely normal if you haven't understood all of it. This is also why we have this exercise. So I guess after lunch, you will have time to complete the gallery, fix the bugs that it has, and get to know Slate a little bit more.
So for today's lunch, we have a Mexican. So I'm gonna, maybe we put everything in the middle of the table so everybody can grab, because this is more like tapas style. So here we have 3 tacos, and that's, one is with the barbacoa, which is full beef, the onion and lettuce, pico de gallo, the tomato sauce. I can just put it in there, like, and then you check. But the second option is vegetarian, which is sweet potato, black beans, or what others, taco stuff. Well, you can check it. Like, I can just leave it here. Like, one is like 2 of them are not vegetarian. The third one is vegetarian. And then we also have some nachos and quesadillas that are of course vegetarian. So we need to do this. Maybe that's the easiest, right? One for next, so you have to just name that. Honestly, so something knows that in this country. Yeah,
That's where we have. Yeah, because that's we will have. We are. Let's even exclude. Yeah, but we are, yeah, it's there, so we have some part of the open one, but the level. But there's no redesign, so it's not like if it goes, so it's People understand, so like one floor is going to be kind of workspace right now, and there's one floor now. And then there's one floor in the. Yeah. That's, when I went, when we went to see that, it's also. Oh, yeah.
the veg or.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, later. I don't know. That's why I'm thinking.
This is what we want in the middle. Yes.
Ah, so you just-
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
can take that.
I think.
I mean, that's one was sharing.
Yeah, it's the lecture, I don't know.
I try and see if there's any, you want to
No, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I mean. But this is a fraud.
Thank you.
Mm. Should we put Mexican music? Huh. What? What the fuck, Thomas? When I press the Y, it goes a set. Okay. What?
Thomas, can you hear me? Hello. If you're started class, would you please open your microphone?
Hello, yes, but people are working in the exercise still, so you can see
Oh, okay, thank you. Thanks.
and be part of the class.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Because this is Elena was asking.
Oh, okay. What was she asking? Oh. She was asking.
If we were like, if you were started with the class or not.
Ah, yeah.
This one or this one? Maybe this one or this one.
Are you sharing? No. Which one do you want to share?
I think I was already sharing.
No,
Oh, you did.
I paused
continue?
it for the Dutch.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Because then you can cut it. Or how do you do it? Yeah, I know. So I just earlier I would, stop the recording when we go for lunch, but then sometimes I just forget to send it on again. So that's why I didn't do that anymore.
Better to just have it all.
It's a bit annoying.
Hey, that's in Buenos Aires.
Ah, nice.
How confident are you using this?
It's the React docs. I think they have some great examples. Like the first thing we were working on, it was actually famous women inventors. And this one is like, I don't know,
Famous
garden, whatever,
Yeah. The
art,
art.
art installation.
Yeah, it will open with the sun and then closes at night. I want to achieve the calm nerve.
Somebody put some thought into the example. In contrast to our curriculum.
Maybe we should.
It's on the record. Fine, I stand to my record.
What do you mean? Wait.
I mean, it's the things that I could have contributed to the curriculum.
Mute yourself, please. How do you?
How do I mute? I don't know, this Zoom, how do you?
Oh, yes, up there. Yeah.
But I don't need to
No.
Zoom. I didn't need to mute. Unless you wanna discuss something.
What you just said.
Ah, yeah, the problem is that every time, and I. Every time we get class. Now I don't need that. So every time we finish a class, there are some things that I need to add. Then I never. It's also my fault.
Because maybe we could see the difference.
I mean, to be honest, I think this approach is much easier. Just forget about the curriculum and use the, React, guides. Because they already did all the work in writing the text, making the examples, and exercises. The only thing that doesn't work with is chalk. So I guess. And then also this could go away. And then decide to make a new React website. It's my idea. I feel like we're doing so much double work.
Creative.
Really, it's coming up today, so it takes so much time. Really difficult.
How they will change. It always happens.
Yeah, it has to be changed every year, but it's not a easy task. Many complain about it.
Yes.
Oh,
But then maybe, and then it is different. And then you get.
that's
That was too late.
what I proposed for React. I think I was using for HTML, CSS.
Or maybe it should be like the wrong link. Are you?
The lambda function of one line.
I'm still looking at the curriculum in terms of goals. I think they're pretty good. In terms of reactive, there's no other. I just ignore the examples. Because they're usually not very, they're not very well thought out. Like they're not didactically good. In terms of, teaching the stuff that they need to teach.
Wait, where is the?
That's the limit that you go in. All different purpose. UI, interactivity, state, and state features. Okay.
Okay, and where are we?
This is the quick. These four chapters. Yeah, we're doing a little bit of a mix. We're doing some interactivity, some state, some UI. That's it. I really so did the correct. Yeah, because yes, she was asking me. This is what I said, like, I would prefer to just, keep using this instead of updating the curriculum.
Because someone will keep it documented, then we need to make sure we also, there's people listening, they just like confusion. Because if someone else is speaking next time, whatever, then some people going to be the same. Maybe that's something we can also talk about with the new education manager. Yeah, there's going to be education manager, right? Yes, it's not replacing. Yes. Okay. But they want us to.
I think my thought is I'm not very well suited for this, because I know the curriculum, and I know that I'm ignoring it, and I don't want to do anything about it.
The stack is loaded.
So it's a very good, example. It's a very constructive. Sure.
And then we see all together. Maybe we can do it this way, like for the next section object of insert. At least like modify it, if you're not using this, then we just take it out and add this. Doesn't do this.
So the interest is also to see what teachers go ahead and probably.
Please, like you on this.
Yeah. I'm now using import, then I could use until you got. Yeah, but it was 1.5. I think that's also the problem. I don't think it uses. I don't know. Did you make your own version? You had so many, roll with what advice. And I made you an version of this. Need to, limit the time. And now you use the yours, and I want this to explode. But now I'm, education manager, thinking of exercise, take 1 hour each to make. And to test them for another hour. Yeah, so I prefer just like to do that. And this is why I know the I can take some stuff from it. I have to take some stuff from it, like and the goals. But I can ignore some of the stuff. And for me, there's not really a solution to update. It's what should I update it with? Then I have to spend a lot of time to figure out what should I update it with. The structure, with the So I would prefer to, just maybe, either we can actively, just decide and make each, what do we want to do, or we can remove some stuff from the show. Exactly. But then again, it doesn't necessarily have to, because the homework also lives in a bit of a different realm. This is not good. Yeah, this is how it is right now, because I'm not supporting other mental situations, right? And they only have access to the curriculum. And so for them, it makes more sense when it's based on what is there. They have to see. That sometimes also makes this things confusing. That's why I'm just looking for. You just said get this. I think the easiest way to hold this is that so this is just really the new press get it, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because I remember we talked about that last year, which she's not with what kind of future the whole things are getting for you to talk. And we can yes, that's my point. I told you I also get what I was saying. So it's more price unless someone this is how the real world works. I don't know, but the manager wants to do something else. So we can't have to, yes, about surrounding states of information, and we can have to figure out what we need. That being said, I don't want to make complicated on purpose. You can do that, but it's very sweet. Yeah. You are taking step by doing something new, and then we go. It's the first class you do it. Having done it for the last 20 class. Then you can also get feedback about how it goes. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Also some pages, some exercises or examples. They have put some
Yeah.
but and then I have a solution in that.
Should work, even though it's not. Are you sure?
Yes, yes.
But now that you put it, it works.
Yeah, it works, but I don't know, so it wasn't offered, and we are also in German, so you're saying we were supposed to not to put it here, because that was the last slide that
And
I can't remember. To be honest.
okay, yeah, JSON is a different thing. So, okay, maybe this is interesting for everyone. So when you're working in JavaScript, what people will sometimes use is trailing commas. So it's a comma at the end of a list, at the end of an array, for example. You put a comma here. I'm not entirely sure about the history of why people started doing that, but it's totally valid. You can do that. It helps you a little bit if you duplicate the last line and change the value. You can't forget about the comma. It doesn't matter if you put a comma in the last line or you don't put it. In recent versions of JavaScript, it's totally the same and fine. A different story is JSON. You can't put trailing commas in JSON. So JSON can't have extra commas. It doesn't understand that, but JavaScript can. So just for you to know. And also, I think we should look at the exercise because we're running out of time. Have you found out what is wrong with this component and why it crashes? No? It exceeds the array. I think that's actually correct. Let's see. So you remember what happens when we click next, right? We call this function. Okay, and what does this function do? It increases the index. It adds 1 to the index and sets a new index. Okay, so what happens if we reach the last one and I increase the index? Exactly. So I do this. The sculpture is undefined. So
And what you do not have return for these two functions? Is it okay?
why we have
And
you
do
asking?
not, do not have return for these functions here?
These functions, why do you think they would need a return?
To return the set index, the new value.
Ah,
Or
okay. Yeah, but this is a good question because you could think that, I need to return the new value from this function. This is actually not how it works. To set the new state, you call the set state function. So the setter that we talked about. So you call this function. You don't have to return anything. Once you set this function, once you call this function, you have told React that now I want the index state to be index plus 1. And then what React does, it goes to the component and it says, okay, the state has been updated, I have to re-render. So then it goes to the component and it says, okay, index is now index plus 1. And then it goes through your component tree and it figures out, okay, where I have to put index here, and I have to put index here, and I have to update it here. And then it will re-render the component. So this is basically how state works, right? You change it with the function, and then it changes in all the places that React keeps track of. Okay? So there's no return or anything like that. Remember when I talked about the setter, that it also has a version where there's a callback, because then you're actually talking about a return. So I can do this where I say, index plus 1 is the new value, but I can also pass it a function, a callback function. So I can say set index, let's just make a, an arrow function. And then I have to return from this function. So this is maybe what you mean. And what this allows to do is actually use the old index. So I can do this and I can put it here. And the difference is that if I update my index, let's say I update my index really quickly and React doesn't have a chance to re-render then this counter might be wrong because it might use an index from 2 renders ago when I click the button. So if you really want to be sure that you get the latest value, then you use this parameter that is being passed to your callback. But most of the time, you can just forget about this version of setting your state, and instead you can do this, right? This is the simpler version. Just so you know, there's also a callback version of this, which works like that. And you can look all of this up in the React docs. They describe it really well. So if you need it again, you can just look there. Okay, so now back to what is the error here and how do we fix it? So can you explain, like, conceptually, what do we need to change, like in normal words, not in React or JavaScript? Like, what do we need to do to solve this problem? That
Is less than the length of an array.
yes, so we need to check if the index is less than array, less than the length of the array. And where do we check that? Actually, I don't need to scroll down. Yes, exactly. So what I can do is I can add an if statement here, right? So if
Index. No. If, yeah, greater than.
I was going to do something else, but yeah, this is actually easier to understand. So if the index is now we have to think, because the index is 0, starts from 0, but the length does not include the 0.
It's length minus 1.
So this is always an issue. So then we say sculpture list. Like this. I'm not sure. I'm gonna try. No, okay, this didn't work.
But maybe we can delete index plus 1.
Yeah, exactly. But we kind of want to make this so that you can understand what is going on, right? So actually, to improve the readability, we can extract this one and say this is the new index, right? And then what we want to check is
Already you have new index and this is set index, isn't that? The new index is set index and the next value of index.
no, this is the next value of index that we're computing here, index plus 1. So the new index has to be smaller than the list length minus 1. Actually, I think this should be correct. So I'm not sure why it's not quite. But
I think because the length starts from 1, index starts from 0. So
Yes.
there is this minus 1. And when you are
Yes.
adding plus 1 to a new index,
yes,
so there is, like, you have to do it length minus 2 in this case. And I believe that it's gonna work if you continue with if statement, like else then don't work.
you mean then this should work, right?
Yes.
Plus 1 minus 1.
But yeah, if it is 0, so it is.
I don't think
1.
that this is the problem. No, I think the problem is that this doesn't update properly. So let's see if we can get it to update somehow. I think this is because this error here. I have my drafts folders is full.
But if it possible to still use let.
But you are using your cons instead of let, or it's It's
No.
changing.
No, this is not, the problem is not the code, the problem is the editor. It's not saving my code. So let's go back to,
Make the game like yourself, and play the game.
Oh,
The code is correct.
exactly, yeah, it works on my machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's try this editor. Let's see if this works better.
Play the game with yourself. Yes,
Okay,
works.
actually now it doesn't work because we can't go to 12.
Yes.
Okay. So actually we can either do this, or what we can do is we can say, okay, smaller or equal, right? You know this operator? Yeah. So then it should work. Okay, cool.
And what if you wanted to start again?
Question for you. What if I wanted to wrap?
I bet some-
We can add else set index meter.
Great, perfect. Okay,
That's pretty hard.
yes.
Yeah, that's pretty hard.
So something that I also sometimes use is math.min, I think, in this case. I think this should work. Just having a little fun with this exercise now. We already solved it, so. Yeah, this one also works. So do you know what this does? No? No idea?
It shows the minimum value of these two things.
Exactly. So I give the function 2 parameters, which are numbers, and then it will return the one that is lower. And in this case, I always want the new index unless it is higher than the sculpture list length -1. So then it will just give me this, which is the maximum. Okay, never mind. This is just a little, side note. If you ever want to do some fancy programming, you can use math.min and confuse your colleagues.
Good thing you tried it. I would have said let's use the modular, but then.
Use a Okay, no, don't go that far. Don't go there. Don't go there. All right. Let's go further in our presentation. There are actually a couple of slides left, but we only have 35 minutes. So let's see what we have. I had some extra bonus exercises. We're not going to do them. Use effect. So you might have heard about use effect, right? Many tutorials mention it when you fetching data and stuff like that. But over the last, let's say 2 to 3 years, the React core team who develops React has actually realized that people haven't really used use effect how they intended it to be used. So we've kind of misused use effect and we've used it way too much. So actually, I don't really want to teach you about use effect that much. It is supposed to be used when you're synchronizing with external systems. So I put this trademark there because nobody knows what external systems means. But this is what the docs write, and they also give some examples, fortunately, so you don't have to guess. So for example, if you're listening to some window resize events, then you use effect. If you're doing some WebSockets, and that's actually about it. There aren't that many use cases for use effect, so please don't use it. It's kind of outdated. You can try it, of course, if there's no other way, but I will show you another way shortly with a library that we can use instead. And check the docs. There's a whole section about why you shouldn't, why maybe you don't need use effect. And it also tells you how you can use effect if you want to. And this is basically our last exercise. I'm again skipping the curriculum exercise. Let's see, do we want to do this? Actually, I want to skip this one because this was an exercise for use effect. But since I don't think you really need it right now, I'm just going to skip it. I will check later if the homework includes it. So then maybe we still have to talk about it a little bit. But for now, let's do another exercise for 20 minutes where we talk about data loading. So this is a very common thing, right? You have a component and it needs some data from an API, from a REST API, some JSON. And what I want to introduce you to is a library that we use, that we can use. There are also other libraries that do a very similar thing. It's called SWR. It's made by the people who made Next.js and Vercel. Maybe you heard about that. And this library, it says React hooks for data fetching. So this is what it does. It's a hook that you can use. It's not built into React, so you have to install it actually. And then you can start fetching some data. So let's do this as an exercise. I would like you to start a new React project locally in your VS Code by using a Vite. You still have the link in the team channel from last week that Lucas posted, how to set up a new Vite project. And then make a profile using this API. You can find it at randomuser.me. And then try to, make a profile like this. It doesn't have to be, hover stuff. Maybe just list some of the profile properties, and use this API that they provide, and use SWR. If you click on the Get Started, it tells you what to do. Maybe we can do it together for the first time. Then you can try something else. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, we want to start a new Vite project. So where do I start? Yeah, this one. So let me, open a new folder in VS Code. I'm going to make a new folder on my desktop. Okay. I mean, this shouldn't be new to you. You open the terminal. You put the command that you want to run it. It's asking for the project name. I just want to put it in this folder, so I put dot. I want React, JavaScript, okay. Run the install. Okay. And I think when we were talking about JavaScript, we also talked about NPM, didn't we? This package manager, that Node package manager. Maybe you also talked about it in Node.js. Yes, okay.
I expect people to say yes.
Great. So you use that package manager to install the library that we're going to use. So it's SWR. So we say npm install SWR. Okay, great. It's installed. And now let's say run dev. So let me see if I can make an example that doesn't spoil your task that you have. maybe I can find another API. Okay, animals. Let's get some cat facts. How does this work? What? There's no API here. Okay. Let's try another one. Dog facts. Jeez. Yeah, so here we have a URL. And it's not working. You see the quality of these APIs, they vary a lot. Let's see if this one works.
You'll need to go /API/facts.
Oh, somebody has joined the Zoom who's in the same room, I think.
You have an echo?
Somebody just joined the Zoom, maybe just joined us.
But it's okay. They muted themselves. Maybe it was just an echo in the room. But who is it? Nobody knows. Okay. Okay.
It's like cycling through the initials, or like, who is this, who is this, who is this?
Okay, I think I have found an API now. That was the most difficult part. So now, when you start with a new library, I guess you already know that we should check out the docs, right? So it tells you here what you need to do. So the hook is called use SWR, right? So what I'm going to write is, const empty object use SWR. Okay. So now it tells me that it's not defined. So we should import it. Right. It suggested me to import it. I accepted that. It imported it. Then here we can see, if we press Control space, we can see what it actually exports. And this is because this library has types added to it. So we can actually use some of that information that is in TypeScript. We can actually use that in JavaScript as well, just in our editor. So it tells us that, okay, there's some data. Actually, this is the only thing that we're interested in, right? We want some data from the API. And then the URL, we put it here. And I think as far as I understand, this is not all, because we also have to specify a fetcher. So let's make the fetcher. You know how to fetch some data, right? How do you do that? Fetch. You put the URL. And then you get some data, right? Okay, let's make this async await. Okay, I want to fetch the URL. And then we're going to return the JSON. You can just use the very same function here as your fetcher. Previous versions of SWR came with this by default, but now they make you make that. I don't know why. but this is the most basic fetcher that we can make. We use fetch, which is built into the browser, take the URL that comes from here, and then we return the JSON. I actually don't have to because SWR will await the function result on its own, but I could. It doesn't really make a difference. And then I should be able to use the data. Now I have no idea what form this data is in. So let's see. Well, I can't really. Yeah, I can actually see it here. Okay, so there's actually a data attribute on the data in this case, and that's an array. So, is there a name? There's no name. Oh, there's a name here in attributes. Okay. Maybe I will just console log for now. This is always. No, you're not supposed to use that API. For the exercise, I was imagining using this API, which is random user. It's this one. Okay, I realized I should have prepared this in a different way. I'm sorry about this. We can also just use that one. Then we're all on the same page, right? Okay, so let's just do this together, this exercise. Okay. I realized that might be a little bit, I got this a little bit too advanced for this session. But I think the reason why I'm including this is because I think it's a really good tool for you to know. Because you're gonna fetch a lot of data in a lot of components, and it really sucks if you're using useEffect and useState. So try and use some libraries that can do this for you. And now let's see if we get some data. If I open my, oh, that was the wrong one. Let's try this one. Okay, we got some results. You see? You got the same? No? Not yet? Okay, so the cool thing about this hook is that whenever we come back to the page, it will actually refetch and refresh the data. So you always have this illusion of it automatically updating. So in this case, since we're getting a random user, it will show a different user in each page load. So to illustrate that, I could probably put the name of the user. This is a very complicated structure that they built. Yeah, so let me put the name in the headline. So how do I do that? Any ideas? Yeah, I'm in this case, since I only ever get one user, I don't really want to map, right? So I can use the data and then I need to put the right one. So this is my data. I want to get results from the data. So I say data.results. And actually this is an array, so I want to take the first one. Right? You see it's an array with one object. So we take the first one and then we take the name property. So name, and then we say first and last, I guess. Let's do this again. Let me say last. So let's see if we can see, yeah, so now we can actually see the name of the random user. And then if I go back and I focus this page again, it will load a different user. And this is not because, I mean, this is not a very useful app because it will reload a different profile every time you visit it. But if you were loading some data that is more useful, then it would actually be quite nice if it updated every once in a while so that the user doesn't have to, you know, refresh the page to get the new stuff. Yeah, and that actually it doesn't work when I refresh because data is undefined in the beginning. Any ideas on how I can fix that? So when I refresh the page, I got an error where it says data is undefined. So why do you think that is? Why could data be undefined? Because this is a fetch call, it's async, right? So we have to wait for it to finish before we actually get the data. And in React, you can't really wait because your component is being rendered and you can't really stop it from being rendered. So the first time it's being rendered, where we don't have the data yet, the data will just be undefined. So what we can do is we can check for that, right? We can say, okay, if we have data, then we want to show the headline. And otherwise, we want to show loaded. Okay, so now I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see. Yeah, so briefly you saw it showed loading and then it showed the name. So try it out. You only have 15 minutes, so this will be the last thing for today. Sure. You want to see the, yeah. Have you haven't worked with these kind of operators before? Ternary operator, exactly. Some of you have, some of you maybe haven't. So this is basically how you do if else in React, because it's the only way that JSX can understands. Another thing that you can do is you can actually do this. You can say you can make a Boolean expression out of it, because then the way that it works is that if data is defined, it will then continue to this one. And if data is not defined, it will just say false. It will evaluate to false. You don't have to know this, you just have to know that, you know, you can use the and in React as well to only show this paragraph when data is defined. So these are the two options that you have. Now let me see if I can freeze the projector because I want to look at the homework. Remote for the projector. There's no remote, I don't think I can do anything.
You want to just turn off the.
No, I just want to freeze the screen. Like most projectors, you can freeze it so that it doesn't change. Oh, okay, whatever. I will get back to this code. Sorry, I have to. No. This is too advanced for this meeting room. Fine. Thank you. I think I tried this before and failed, so it's fine.
You can do is just take a screenshot and don't mirror this, but
Oh, that's gonna be too complicated.
oh,
Okay, actually, the homework doesn't include anything about fetching data, so this is something on top. The homework references a to-do app. So this is something that you were supposed to do within the session. You haven't done that. But if you go to the lesson plan, you can take this code from the to-do app, from the lesson plan, and make it into your to-do app. So you don't necessarily have to do the exercises, I think, at least. And if you have to, well, then there's some extra exercises in the homework. I'm sorry about that.
what are we supposed to do? Could you please repeat what?
So the homework.
Yeah.
I'm just taking a little glance at the homework.
Yeah.
The homework references the to-do list app. You have probably not heard about to-do list app, have you?
Yes.
You have. Last homework. Okay, so this builds on the last homework, maybe.
But this
We'll
is,
see.
I think maybe this is the same way that we work with an array of objects and.
Yes, I mean, that's good that you say. You can apply what you learned today to your homework, even though even though we didn't work on a to-do app today, right? So I hope the homework makes sense, even though we were working on a bit of a different angle today with the exercises. But now for the last minutes, you can just have some fun with, you know, the SWR library, or you can look at the homework already, whatever you prefer. Thanks.
Again, back to the.
Yes, I can go back to the code. Sure. So have you run the install and then install SWR?
No, just.
Please do it first,
But.
because then your editor will suggest it to you.
But I have to stop this. React,
You can do it in a different terminal or you can stop it. It is your choice.
But it doesn't show any extra thing, although I have run that, so there is nothing extra here.
No, but you can go here and then delete the.
It's not complete, but the article,
No.
because of this part, I think.
Yeah, try and fix the error first.
It's sure there. It's.
What is it that you ran?
I just ran the this. Here.
Mhm.
And then I'm trying to run.
You're in a different folder. Try and close this. And then this one, you have to exit before you can run as a local. This one didn't have any action. And then you run. You have to be in the right folder. Now I mean, what I'm trying to tell you is that writing imports manually is not a good idea. But of course, you can do that. This is what it looks like. But
So what
you
was the another way to write?
yeah, so you shouldn't write the imports yourself. You should let your editor do the import for you. So if you write your code, it will suggest you, oh, do you want me to import this? and then you say, yes, I want you to import this. Right?
That's when I bring back it's a system. For example, it's a system, and I click on it, but then it will return it in something else that I have, for example. For example, to do this, that was the main problem I had. So I would like to example for it to do some wrong, and then when I was writing the direction, then it's
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Then I clicked on that. Then it would turn into what it was, template format, not what I had.
Yeah, so what you mean is that you wrote something like this, but then it didn't do this?
No, it would turn into, for example, right default.
Ah. Hmm. Yeah, that seems like a bug in your editor, some extension maybe. Yeah.
I installed that.
Yeah, you installed it, okay?
Yeah, but.
It's not in your imports. No, it doesn't get added automatically to your imports. You have to do this.
Ah,
But I want to, yes, but I want you to learn how to do it with help of your implant. So don't do it manually, but have your ADD help you.
So I cannot really what
So I'm not sure why your editor is not complaining about this because it's not imported, but apparently it's not, it's fine with that. But it should, no suggestions. I don't know why it's not.
Here, so I have nothing here.
No, but it's because your editor is not working correctly. Yeah, so it's supposed to.
Here or not?
Okay, let's see. Can you say? No, you. Okay.
It's automatically save it.
Yes, so then you have to add it manually. If your editor is not doing anything, of course you have to add it manually. Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh. The question was, I mind to show the direction, but when I was see the display also, I have also the same for.
What about this? For example, if you remove the actors, you should. And show you the solution for taking control of the base. Not from on. Your cursor is outside. You have something else. Yeah, you have like change like this. Yeah. Okay, then it doesn't work. I don't know I don't know how to do it. I'm sorry. But you can read that, like you can put another key combination on this in the settings of VS Code. So it manages the data for you as much. Yeah, so use effect is a way to run an effect. And that means it's can run some code within your component. It's very difficult to run, something like a fetch in your component because it doesn't wait for it to finish. Every time it renders, it just runs over the code. And then how do you do a fetch? So this is where you can use effect. Use effect allows you to run something in the background, basically. Then run it again when some conditions are met. It's a very bad way to catch data.
Actually, if you have, example, save, for example, data and set it, and then you should use effect to depending on the state. It just it's written there the component after this state changes.
Okay, so I can show you how many tutorials will tell you how to do this, right? And it's still a valid way to do it. It's just not very good. Okay, so I make a new state, and it has some fetched data. So let's say we start out with an empty object, right? And then what I need to do is I add a use effect, which is, it takes a callback. So it's a kind of hook that doesn't return, like an array of stuff, but it just takes a function and then runs that function as an effect. So then I would do, then I would need to do, okay, fetch this. And I can't use async await because that includes more complicated other stuff. So I have to use promise chaining, which is already the first red flag for me. Okay, I fetch it. I have the response, I have the let's do this more simple, response.json. And then I have the JSON. And then I'm going to say set fetch data JSON, right? Okay. And then there's this other thing about use effect. It's just very poorly designed, actually, that it runs every single time that the component renders. And so this, if I would just do this, it would actually be an infinite loop, because it runs when the component renders, then it calls set state, and set state triggers a re-render because we're updating the state. And then it renders again, and then it runs this again, and again, and again, and again, and it never stops, right? So it's really easy to have an infinite loop if you're using use effect. This is one more reason why I recommend you not to use use effect. Anyways, we can fix this by adding a dependency array. Adding an empty dependency array means run it, just 1 or 2 times in the beginning. Don't run it again. If we add some dependencies, it will actually run it whenever the dependencies change. So let's see if instead of data, we can use fetch data now to show our name. Fetch data.results is undefined. I might have made a mistake here. It's because it's already defined here. So let's start with, having it be undefined. Then it will fit better with this one. Okay, so now we have implemented the same thing that we use SWR for, using use effect and using a state. And what we can do is add a dependency here. So let's say we could actually add count as a dependency now. So that means whenever I click this one, it will then run the effect again, right? But what you will see is that this one doesn't have the smart stuff that SWR has. So if you come back to the page, it always shows the same name. So it doesn't update automatically when when you focus the page again. And also it uses a couple of lines more, and it doesn't cache the data for you in that way that SWR does. I know it's a little bit hard to see, you know, the advantages, but I think alone the fact that, you know, you have to use this chain, it's very easy to create an infinite loop. These are all arguments for, you know, looking for some other solution than using use effect. Does that answer your question? Somewhat. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're actually out of time, so I will stop the Zoom and thank you so much for today.